All right, we're live, and Dr. Rob Kiltz with Sarah Carnivore Yogi. Really excited. Kleiner, is that right?
Yes, you got it. First try.
Awesome, awesome. I'm excited to have you on, and we're all in this crazy carnivore world, and we're learning together.
Yeah.
And I've got a combination of YouTube, Facebook, and also I'm working on Instagram to share with people, at least for those for whatever reason aren't on this particular venue. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this carnivore world and about pregnancy and beyond.
Yeah. So I started carnivore in January 2019 after I was kind of at the end of my rope. I've been teaching yoga for 12 years and in studio, tons of classes per week. I haven't been doing that since the pandemic, but at the time I was teaching a ton and also getting up really early and practicing at like 5 in the morning and doing a pretty vigorous practice. And my body was just falling apart. And I was like, you know what? I'm 39. This does not make sense for me to have all this joint pain, all the issues with my gut. I was constantly bloated and I was really trying, I was eating a little bit of meat, but just not much. I was eating a very heavy plant diet. So I believed that loading up my plate with tons and tons of vegetables, get all your kale and your, the greens and the superfoods and then a little tiny piece of meat, lean meat, mind you. It either had to be bison or grilled chicken. It just wasn't very much, not much protein. And my body was just begging for mercy. And a good friend of mine is a functional medicine doctor here in Atlanta where I live. Her name's Dr. Rimka. And she said, you know what? I could run labs for you. I could look at everything going on, but I've been doing this diet for the last 5 months called the carnivore diet. Maybe you should try that before we run a bunch of expensive labs. And I was like, this woman's insane. I said, no way, no way. And I'm a yoga teacher. I'm supposed to just go from like eat nothing but meat.
But
um,
just everything I know in the yoga world and most of the world we've all been living in, right?
yes, yes. There's a lot of influence that tells us eating meat is going to kill you. It's bad for the environment. It's the worst possible thing you can do. There's just so much propaganda that's been going on for years. And then in the yoga world, it's like 10 times louder. Um, so I kind of hung up the phone and didn't do it right away. But after about a week, I just said, you know what? I was at the point where I had to sleep on the couch because my stomach would be so upset in the night that I would disrupt my husband from sleeping. And I was like, this is ridiculous. So I was fine. I'm going to do it. And literally, it was 3 weeks later. I remember being at my 5 a.m. yoga class and just sitting there kind of in awe, like, I'm not hurting anymore. Like, my stomach is flat, my joints aren't hurting, my skin is clear. What the heck? This is just from just eating meat. This doesn't make sense to me at all. Um, but then I kind of was sitting there and I'm like, what if I started a page as a joke called Carnivore Yogi, because everybody in this damn room is vegan. But people need to know about how this has helped me. And so I started my Instagram kind of as a joke and as a way to
Mhm.
follow other carnivores like Dr. Baker and, just kind of get inspiration. I think it's important when you start doing a lifestyle like this that you surround yourself with that inspiration. So and I was thinking I'll just do this 30 days, but I ended up, I was completely strict carnivore for 2 solid years. And then 2021, I kind of played around a little bit, just reintroducing some things. But I think it's a great thing to try if you're just in a lot of pain and body is inflamed. It's wonderful. And a lot of people just think you're crazy, but it really did great things for me.
And when you say you began to play around 21, and where are you at in that story, and what type of things are you playing around with, and how does it make you feel?
In 2021, I was just curious to see, has my gut healed? Can I have a little asparagus that I cooked for my family? How is this? Is it going to make me sick? Because I had heard a lot of carnivores that try to go back to eating, foods that they like to eat and have horrible reactions. And that actually, as long as I was super careful, it wasn't the case for me. in the summer of 2021, I played around a little bit with just adding in like 1 day a week. I decided I would have like a homemade ice cream. You know, that's a great thing to have in the summertime, or a little bit of fruit, or like I was just doing it 1 day a week. And I just wanted to see, like, how could is my body going to jump back into ketosis the next day? How is it going to make me feel? And so that's the extent really of me playing around a lot. And my body did great with it. My body was always, if I was to have something on a Saturday evening, let's say, by Sunday at 11 or 12, I had ketones of a 1.0 on my blood meter or higher. So my body was able to just do this metabolic switching very efficiently. And that's kind of what I was curious about as well. But now, a lot of people know I'm pregnant. So I'm 22 weeks pregnant. And so first trimester was a huge challenge to stay carnivore. I did not stay carnivore first trimester. But now that I'm 22 weeks in, it's a lot easier for me to just, most of my diet, what I eat now is just really meat and eggs, wild seafood, and then the occasional seasonal fruit that if I want it. But it's not like I eat bushels of bushels of fruit, because ancestrally we never would have done that, right? Our ancestors didn't have access to that. So I try to keep my diet a little bit more in line with that, but keep the meat, the eggs, those are the building blocks for the baby, for my body. And that's really the base of my diet now.
And how is it working in your yoga practice and teaching the masses that want to learn about yoga and the basic ancient practice of yoga, and how does it work into the carnivore conversation?
Well, it's not something that a lot of people are necessarily open to that have been immersed in the yoga world for a while until they start having health problems. The amount of women that I have met that are vegetarian or vegan that are yogis, the yoga teachers in the yoga world, that have hair falling out, they're anemic, they're exhausted, severe B12 deficiencies, all these things. It's been cool that I can kind of share my story with them, and then also add in the flavor of regenerative agriculture and actually understanding how cycles of nature work. And then really going back to things like the Vedas. In the Vedas, which is one of the original yogic texts, meat is used as medicine. Honey and, milk are foods of the yogis, of the gods. And so the way that meat became demonized has happened because of a lot of people wanting to control others. It wasn't necessary. And there is a spiritual element. There are some sects of yoga where that is part of it, but that's not how it originally started out. And if you go back to the oldest ancient texts, it's actually not there. So,
But it's interesting. I've always found that ultimately it's still controlling others.
It is.
Because all the spiritual practices were about controlling others.
Exactly.
And so what you're learning is how to control yourself. And you mentioned about metabolic conversion, that your body, and my sense is there's no such thing as metabolic conversions. Our metabolism always works the same. And we are capable of eating some plants from time to time, unless you happen to be particularly poisoned to it right away, and it'll kill you right away, which
Right.
Some people with mushrooms and peanuts and other seeds and nuts, allergies are very common, but most of them are long-standing, silent until you're diagnosed with cancer, Alzheimer's, dementia, depression, or other diseases, including repetitive pregnancy losses and infertility, which I believe is all secondary to a high plant-based, low animal fat diet, which is crazy.
Yeah. And a lot of mitochondrial dysfunction as well, which if you're poisoning your body constantly, that's going to damage your mitochondria.
Well, yeah, no, but the main poison is actually sugar. And the mitochondria are very, very sensitive to too much sugar.
Definitely. Absolutely.
Because we eat plants every day. So from time to time, you can eat a plant, but our body only burns fat. It never burns sugar. Ketosis is not the conversion of burning sugar than burning fat, because it makes no sense that your mitochondria are going to switch. there's no switch. We know that fasting is lasting, that fat is the fuel for the human body. Because if you're an anorexic, you are at significant risk of dying quickly. And ultimately, the damage to our body is to the lie, which is we're herbivores, or even that we're an omnivore of any significance. But we know that fatty acids are critical to be eaten, and the bowels are the most sensitive organ of our body, and we've damaged it. And so my theory is that glucose is never the energy for our bodies. Fat always is. It just doesn't make any sense why your body would burn sugar one moment and fat another. It's part of another lie that we've lived with, because as long as sugar is thought to be the energy of your body, we can convince people that they should be eating plants.
Right. That's one thing that a lot of people say, is that sugar or glucose is the preferred fuel source for the brain. And I just really have a hard time buying into that, because when you look back, we didn't have access in the wintertime to fruits, to carbohydrates. It wasn't available. Most of us that, are of northern heritage didn't grow in the winter. So we had to learn. Our bodies evolved in doing ketosis. That's how we evolved. We had to hunt. We had long periods of time without food. So evolutionarily, to say that the primary source of fuel for the brain is glucose, I think is not really fully understanding how we evolved.
And you mentioned that ketones, and I think keto is dead. Carnivore is the master. And ultimately recognizing that we are full-on lions, that we can eat heroin, cocaine, marijuana, seeds, and nuts from time to time, but some of the time it'll kill you fast. But my theory is plants are the sole cause of all disease, and plants cause cancer everywhere. And I've had too many people die of cancer thinking that it's just a mystery, but it's not. Occam's razor is simple. The simple answer is the one. You know how fast you feel good on a pure-on carnivore lifestyle. And we evolved for the last 3.5 million years eating animals. And we even ate other humans. That is our nature as lions. But plants have become the predatory mechanism for the masters to control the masses. Again, it's the money made by selling plants, alcohol, tobacco, and drugs is phenomenal. And the wealthy love to be wealthy. And ultimately, I always say the kings and queens of the world love to stay there. And they control the masses with horse bread. I always recommend people read about horse bread. The medieval bread made out of whole grains, peas, legumes, where the masters ate white bread, because white bread was highly manufactured and cleansed of the majority of the toxins. So, I always tell people, don't measure ketones, don't measure your blood pressure, don't measure your weight, because it'll lead you to a doctor, a drug, or a dissection, because we're still highly manipulated by marketing.
Definitely. I agree. Yeah. If you're always worried about testing, levels of this and levels that, I think it can be helpful when you start doing it. It can be a little bit motivating to say, oh, my body is doing this, cool. But some people live and die by these numbers. And then they kind of freak out and they're like, well, I need this product and I need this. And I'm like, you really don't. Your body is so smart. And that was one of the things I learned on my journey to get pregnant, was that, I didn't need to be taking a bajillion supplements. I tried that and it was not helpful for me. When I allowed my body to do what it needed to do, to be connected to the earth, to eat seasonally, eat locally, eat the meat and things that I could find in my environment, eat enough of those things, and let go of a lot of the supplementation, that's when things happened. But I feel like we in a society, we are looking for a supplement, in this area, people are like, I don't want the medication, but what supplement can I take? What supplement can I take? And there are some supplements that I think can be helpful, but that's not the answer. right? Those are also made out of plants, right?
Although it's interesting, we are actually selling supplements made from the liver, from the
Right. The
organ,
desiccated organs.
including
Yep.
the testes and the ovaries for those
Yep.
women or men that are working to get these things. But ultimately, for me, the most important thing is eat the meat, the fatty meat. People don't understand that
Yeah. You
fat,
have to eat enough fat for sure.
animal fat, reduces inflammation to the glycobiome. The glycobiome is the sugar coating that protects our cells in our body. So the function of amino acids is to make proteins in the body. The function of glucose and other sugars is glycosylation, not energy. So if you understand the glycobiome, we've been mass manipulated by plants and bacteria and yeast in a probiotic to eat, which is deadly for the human body, which is a really hard one to understand in all of this stuff that I've been through this enough now that I know that the majority of the science, because you didn't learn this from a scientist per se. You didn't
Right.
read a paper that had a prospective randomized double-blind placebo-controlled study that was vetted by the experts who basically published it in their vetted journal that costs a lot of money to be a member. And basically, if it doesn't follow the model, it'll never see the light of day.
Right. But that's what people, unfortunately, when you try to start putting out some of this information, people want to see the studies, and I feel like as a society, we've also become too reliant on, I need, like you said, a peer reviewed double blind study with all these people that have approved of it to make sure that this is correct for me, to make sure that this is right for me, when what we really have to think of is how, what did my grandmother do? What did her grandmother do? What were they doing? Because we didn't have all these modern things happening back then, and people didn't have all the modern diseases that we have now. The issues with fertility were not a thing back then either. It's worse and worse now every year.
And how do you incorporate in your yoga classes or in your tribe of yoga this conversation? Because I know for me, I've been carnivore for over 10 years. I was keto and paleo for 3 to 5 years before that. And I actually started in this world with yoga, acupuncture, massage, and meditation 20 years ago. And I incorporated that in our Western practice of medicine because I realized that there was a lot of fallout in the fertility world because people did one treatment or two and then left. And the majority of it was because they emotionally couldn't do it. So we had to really integrate some way in a tribe, in a clan, in a group to help people find the way. And yoga was that, and meditation and prayer was that. And I, get off the treadmill, slow it down, and cool it down. But nutrition didn't start into that for myself until many of my clients, patients, many people that I worked with were getting pregnant on paleo. And then I read and learned about that.
Right.
But I still, in essence, Kiltz on carnivore, I've been doing it for a long time, but I didn't share it as readily until I realized, what the hell am I doing? I can't hold back the truth. And I actually, just love this world. So tell us a little bit about how your world accepts that conversation. And are you really having it?
Definitely. I have people probably that message me on a daily basis almost. A lot of people, and sometimes well-known yoga teachers that are sick and they're struggling and they want to know, how could I make this work? How is this even okay? And one of the things I think is important is education and really helping them to understand where your food comes from and just the way that things actually do work. I just had a great podcast episode this week with a young lady who was a vegetarian for 15 years, and now she is a butcher and a farmer. And we had so many great conversations about understanding how the food chain works, how the circle of life, the cycle of life works, And the fact that if you work with a local farmer and if you get your meat from, a local source, you're doing less harm than you would if you go to your grocery store and buy your almond milk and buy your kale and buy all these things that are, monocropped and responsible for, billions of deaths. Why is a cow different than a field mouse, a deer? All of these animals, billions of animals die due to plant farming. And then when you look at some of these processed vegetarian and vegan foods, the death is mounting and mounting and mounting, because then you have manufacturing, then you have shipping, then you have things that have to fly all over the place. And you're talking about environmental damage here. And so the biggest thing that I try to do with my community is just continue education. I don't want to tell things to people in a way that's going to bewilder them and make them feel stupid. But I want to have an open conversation and a dialogue about how this actually works. And if you do want to eat meat in a conscious way, how do you do that? How do you do that in a way that actually causes less harm and less death than going to the place and getting your kale smoothie made with almond milk and, all the stuff that they put in and chia seeds and all that? Like, how is eating a steak from a local farm better for you, better for the environment, better for all of us than that smoothie that you really think is the healthy thing that you should be getting? So that's how I deal with it, is really just education and being willing to listen to where they're coming from also, because I understand. I've been there.
And it is important, I think, to support our local farms.
Yep.
And milk, cheese, cream, butter, pork, beef, lamb, quail eggs, chickens, whatever it is that you're finding local is best, because we need those local sources. One is it's regenerative to the local community.
Right.
And COVID, quite early on, because of the significance of it and the shutdown, we were at risk of a famine. And people don't understand that if you're reliant, look at what's happening on this baby formula. You're reliant to deliver baby food from a plant product. You're ultimately in a high risk of being dead. And we are recognizing the world is changing, but we're changing it. And it's one person at a time through the sharing of the stories. I call this social medicine, not socialized. It's not run by the government. It's run by those on social media, which are the individuals that share the stories. The marketing of a plant-based diet is the deadliest. My friends have died. My family have died. Too many people are being diagnosed with cancers, which is all secondary to a plant-based low animal fat diet. And the basically most cancers are silent until they're stage 4 and you have months to live and you didn't know it. And interesting enough, most cancer therapy is treated with plant poisons that take you to the brink of death, and they pray to God you're able to come back. And so ultimately, and most chemotherapy drugs actually cause secondary cancers. So until we realize that plants in and of themselves are the predators and we're the prey, you can eat it from time to time. Like I eat French fries from time to time, a small amount, fried in duck grease, no skin, dipped in mayonnaise with duck fat and sour cream and salt. But again, from time to time, not every day, maybe once or twice a month. That is it. Alcohol of any frequency, substance, significance is deadly for the human body.
Oh, yeah.
It damages the mitochondria.
Yes.
But most people don't understand glycation, because you mentioned the mitochondrial damage. Otto Warburg proved this, that glucose is actually the killer. Now, again, there are other sugars floating around in the body besides glucose. There's other sugars, including fructose, which is not deadly. Our body can convert sugars to fat in the liver. And any significance or frequency of the consumption of these things especially in the form of juices and
Oh yeah.
fruits, and again, plant poisons. Look at let's see here. My brain is there. I mean, again, Paul Saladino, Kevin Stock. That's what I was thinking about. Kevin Stock, a dentist. But if you look back for thousands of years, the medicine people of the tribe would create potions to kill things and people or cure them of their diseases. But we're not getting a cure in the modern world of medicine.
No. Well, the thing about fruit that I was saying earlier is that if you eat seasonal local fruit and you actually see what it looks like when it's when it's come from a farm and grown, it's very small. We don't have these giant huge pieces of fruit. That's not what I eat. If I'm going to have something, it's very small, and it's a very small amount, because again, that doesn't make sense. That's not the way that we evolved. That's not the way it's supposed to be. So the fruits that you buy at a grocery store versus the fruit that you can get at your farmer's market or from your local farmer are going to look completely different. And we're not supposed to be eating high amounts of them, 6 times a day. That, again, doesn't make sense. But that's, I feel like, a huge problem, that people are, just loading themselves up with these things. I have to have these things at every meal. And then they're buying the GMO, which is like 10 times worse. And so I feel like that conversation is important too, because, that's when people are eating fruit, they're not doing little tiny amount when it's in season, which is only a few months out of the year. It's not in December most of the time, if you live in the northern latitude. And it's not bushels of it, right?
Little handful from time to time, which I bet fruits and seeds and nuts were a diet if you couldn't find or eat meat. It was a starvation diet. Right. I mean, ultimately,
the meat has to be the centerpiece.
Meat, fatty meat, bone marrow, bone broth.
Yes, the bone marrow. Yeah.
I mean, we didn't have a cauldron, of 500,000 years ago at all. But the all plants that we eat today are manipulated by humans over the last 10 to 20,000 years ago. So ultimately, in the wild, you did not find any of this of any significance or frequency. And I remind people, if the markets were closed and you had no access to a farm, go out and find food today.
Yeah, go forage for it, which I know of some people that forage, which is an interesting thing, but you're not going to be able to eat loads of things that you forage. It just isn't going to exist.
It is. And Ray asked a question about when vegs are poison or predators, how exactly does that work in the body? Heroin, cocaine, marijuana, nicotine, cyanide are plant poisons to kill you and or manipulate you. And there are many, 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 many more poisons that we're not even talking about in this. If you just go to the United States Department of Agriculture's journal on plant poisoning that kills livestock all day long, the government cares more about livestock than it does about us. So we're eating the diet that kills livestock and kills us, but for us, it's a drug, dissections, and eat more plants, because the damage that's caused by plants builds the world of pharmaceuticals. And again, I'm a Western doctor. No disrespect to anyone out there doing what I'm doing, but what I learned is what I was doing and what I do today is just a Band-Aid over the things that actually, if you go full on fatty meat carnivore, this is really critical. Lean meat is rabbit starvation. The amino acids from meat and the simple sugars from plants go to the liver. They must be converted to fat or you die. The liver only makes fat as its number one primary function. You cannot name a disease that it detoxifies other than alcohol and Tylenol, which are man-made constructs. The liver is critical and insulin is critical. But amazingly, it's diabetes. Type 2 is easy. You just stop eating plants and your type 2 diabetes is gone. Obesity causes not one disease. Obesity is the survival genetics. If you're fat, you're surviving the famines, which you technically have the best genetics ever created. The simplicity of losing weight is don't eat plants. You eat fatty meat, you feel like the Ferrari or the Temple, and it's quite amazing. But basically, how do we help more doctors learn and understand this? We show them the example. And that's all I do for my community, is to share the example. And then people come to me and say, Dr. Kiltz, what are you doing? I had a dinner with a few doctors a few weeks ago. Two of them converted. One of them is the scientist. He wants to see the papers. And I say, you'll be dead. You'll be dead before the paper comes out. And basically, the white paper on this one is ancient. We're lions, not pigs, cows, or sheep. And a wolf and a lion that's fed plants is a dog and a cat. They're domesticated animals that are fed deadly, deadly plants. And that's
it's funny you mentioned that. I switched my dog over to a raw carnivore diet recently. My husband's been in charge of her food for all this time, and we got her blood work back a few months ago, and her liver enzymes were elevated. And I said, you know what? I'm taking over. I'm doing this. And my dog is like she's like a puppy. She's 8, but I swear my husband's like, did my dog just get muscles somehow? Like, how does that? Cause her hair's real short right now. So you can see my dog is like super muscular, and she's just like a puppy all of a sudden again. And it's only been, a couple months that we've been doing the raw diet. She also drinks much less water. And that was one observation he made yesterday. He said, she's not drinking the water. Is she okay? Is she sick? And I said, she doesn't need it because she's got high animal fat diet. And when you have that, you're not thirsty all the time. What you were giving her, the kibble, she's constantly thirsty. Her liver enzymes are elevated. She's getting a fatty liver disease from eating this crap because that's not what she's supposed to be eating. And so just looking at my dog, it's like, obviously, that's not what she's supposed to be eating, but that's what we feed our animals, right?
So fatty liver disease is not a disease, actually. The liver's function is to make and store fat. It makes and stores fat for the famines that we survived for the last 3.5 million years.
Right.
See, the deadly disease is that if you feed an animal, a human or a mammal like a dog, cat, or human, if you feed them lean meat and plants, what happens to all the lean meat and plants in the liver?
Yep, the liver can't handle it.
No,
it accumulates.
It's doing what it's meant to do.
Right.
See,
right.
This is the change all. So remember, excess glucose and amino acids cause glycation. Glycation is the damage to the cellular function. So proteins made in the cell are glycosylated from sugars, glycans. See, this is the biology most people don't even know. This is the answer to the game. It's so simple. You need a little bit of sugar and you need a little bit of amino acids in your diet. Actually, no. You need a little bit of amino acids and a lot of fat. The sugars are made in your body. They're called glycans, which cause glycosylation, which is the binding of a sugar to a protein to make it functional. But because our body is marinated in sugar since the day you're born or even before, because
with formula and what your mother ate.
But what your mother ate.
Yep.
By the way, the bacteria, yeast, and microbes also are sharing their DNA to manipulate us. So this is all manipulation of the DNA. That's how we make GMOs. We've been doing it for thousands of years. But the viruses, the bacteria, and the yeast are in our body for their function, actually not our good function. So I tell people that the microbiome is deadly the way we've been taught, because once the glycobiome is damaged due to a high carbohydrate, low animal fat diet, the bacteria, yeast, and viruses now get into your body along with the oxalates, phytates, and the other glycans. And then fermentation in the gut makes what?
Not good. I know that
Alcohol.
much. Yeah, it makes
Alcohol.
alcohol, right? Which also makes gas, right? And
Well, right,
bloating and
methane, heat gas, alcohol. Our children are being manipulated to eat these things to basically be ADHD, OCD, depressed, anxious, and every other disease is caused by a plant-based controlling diet. And again, soy products are deadly. I mean, breast milk, and then your baby, your child, your toddler should eat fatty meat, cheese, not milk, by the way. Milk from a cow or any other milk is deadly. Milk is high in lactose, sugars, and other antigens, which I believe are deadly for humanity, because our babies went from breast milk to eating the fat from the kill and the meat from the kill. And whether we as adults pre-chewed it because we didn't have a chopping board and then fed it to our child probably was more truth than we can understand. But we are ancient hunters. We are not grazing animals. Grazing animals are domesticated. We've been domesticated by the kings of the world and the queens who still own the manipulated marketing that we should all eat a vegan burger.
right.
Which
Is one of the worst things you could eat, especially if you want to go zoom out and look at the environmental damage that those things are doing. But then the seed oils, I mean, that's one of the worst things you could put in your body is seed oils, right?
which are plant made
Right.
by humans in a
In a
plant,
lab, right?
right? A lab, and then now they're making meat
Mhm.
in a lab,
Right.
and that's going to save the
Terrible
world.
idea. It's a
What do you
terrible
think?
idea.
What do you think about that, Sarah?
I think it's awful. I mean, I think it's a crime and I cringe every time I see that stuff in the store. You know, the thing is, not a lot of people seem that they're buying it. It seems like the shelves are always pretty full. So it must not taste very good. I've never tasted it, refused to do so, but I think
But,
it's a crime.
so your comment on water, why don't you
Mhm.
tell us your opinion on this, and I'll give you mine, which I think we're going to be in line.
We'll see. So I actually learned a lot about deuterium. I don't know if you've studied deuterium at all, but plants are extremely high in deuterium, right? Especially the grains, processed foods, anything with seed oils, very, very high in deuterium. And when our body becomes depleted of deuterium, we actually require less water. So, what is a low deuterium diet would be meat and fat. Fat is actually one of the lowest deuterium foods that you can eat, and helps your body deplete deuterium, which actually speeds up your mitochondrial function, helps you heal quicker, helps you just be overall healthier. And so I think it actually, the water issue comes down to depleting deuterium out of the body. Once you deplete, you don't require as much water. The fat is extremely, extremely hydrating. And a lot of what's in my dog's food is just fat and meat. It's a good fat content as well. So I don't know if that's
Yes,
in line at all with what you wanted to say, but
and well, you're getting to a level. See, interesting. So I'm a scientist. I've
right,
written, published, but most science is snake oil
right.
because simplicity is what we all need.
Yes.
We're all just part of the tribe. The tribe doesn't need some really complicated story of X, Y, and Z. So simplicity is air is really important.
Mm-hmm.
We can go about a minute, 2 or 3 without air. We can go a day, 2 or 3 without water, and we can go a week, 2 or 3 without food. We're built for that.
Mm-hmm.
If you're skinny in a famine, you're dead. Fat is the only energy for every single mitochondrial cell of your body. That is it. It is never sugar, ever. Water, we overconsume it because it's another product to sell us.
Yeah. My husband was like, why is she not drinking as much water? I'm like, because she's a dog. Because a dog doesn't sit there and think, I need 8 glasses of water today. I need to drink my gallon of water, which is not a great idea in the first place. But I'm like, she's an animal. She's not going to overthink this the way we do as humans, right?
So we've been manipulated to drink milk, 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 milk. And the question Yuli asked the question about for an infant or toddler, what are they going to drink?
Water.
Water. You drink water, you breathe air, you eat fatty meat. That is the simple. You're going to maybe chew on the bone. You're gonna eat the liver, organ meats, great. But some people are like, I can't eat that. I eat fatty ribeye steak every single day. So are you bored in life?
No, definitely not.
No. What makes you not bored in life, Sarah?
Oh, I just love being outdoors. I mean, I get bored if I have to just, do the same thing over and over again. The food is not what gives me entertainment anymore. I mean, that was one of the things that carnivore helped me overcome, was looking at food as entertainment. When I had to learn that early on, when I go to a family function and everyone's eating cake and chips and whatever, I'm not going to participate in that. I'm there to spend time with people. I'm there to enjoy life. I'm not there to eat the eat the dip. I don't care. I want to see you. I want to connect with you as a person. I want to look in your eyes and have a conversation with you, right? So I don't know if that's what you were getting at with with the boredom.
Because food is the fuel for our creative life.
Right.
Yes, we've created a cultural genre of an amusement park, but ultimately, if you treat your body and mind like the amusement park, you're going to find yourself masterfully sick, potentially dead earlier than maybe you should have. But absolutely, I think that for me, again, I'm really boring on my meals, and boring is the best way to the most fantastic life. And so I see daily habits. For me, I'm up at 4 o'clock in the morning at least. I'm to work by 4:30 to 5 every day. But I do meditation, prayer, yoga, whatever it is. I do a little bit of light resistance work, and I found that and work is our creative art, rather than we've made it to be an ugly word. But basically, for the last 3.5 million years, if you didn't get up and do the hunt, you were actually the hunt.
Right.
And you were eating rather than the kale or Brussels sprouts or broccoli that you want to eat today. But I think it is very, very important that we find the creative nature of life. What drew you and brought you into the yoga world?
Well, my daughter, she was diagnosed with autism when she was very young, and it was a very huge shock to me. She'll be 15 in December. So there's a little age gap between this baby and her. Learned a lot in between the two, but I was just not able to cope with the amount of grief that I had at that time. You think you're going to have a life that looks one way, and then all of a sudden you have quit your job and you're taking your child to therapies and doctors all the time, trying to figure out why she stopped talking, what happened. And so I had to start taking care of myself. I had to put the oxygen mask on myself because I was literally about to fall apart. And I knew that she needed me to be there for her, that her life was going to be profoundly different from her peers, and that I was there to help her through this and guide her. And so yoga was the first time in a long time that I had actually been like, oh my gosh, I'm not breathing. Like my ears are stuck, my shoulders are stuck in my ears. Yoga saved me in so many different ways. And so when I had to quit my job and be home with her, the one place I had to escape was yoga. I'd go to that 1-hour class, and it saved me. And I loved it so much that, when she finally went to preschool, I went to teacher training and became a teacher because I wanted to help other people find that connection with themselves, and then and stop being so plugged into misery and sadness, and understand there's something so much greater than that, and share that with people. So that's why my daughter is the reason I became a teacher all those years ago.
There's a specialness in all of our uniqueness. And I think that's critical. And I think the spirituality that yoga brings to focusing on the breath and the mind, and that community that gives you that space, is so amazingly important.
Yeah, and learning that life is beautiful and to be in the moment and not future casting or going back. And that, everyone says, be in the moment. Da, da, da. I never really knew what that was, or I didn't really know how to do that until I started a regular yoga practice. And then it clicked for me. I'm like, oh, I can be okay right now, even if things are not going the way that I want them to go. I can breathe. I can enjoy this moment. I can be in my body and feel that deep breath and enjoy it. And that's really what yoga helped me a lot with.
So, autism and diet.
Yep.
The magic pill is a great one.
Yep.
But again, my sense is, and I tell her that all disease is caused by a plant-based, low animal fat diet, and it's really remarkable the changes I've seen by doing this in my community and myself personally. The last 10 years, I stopped exercising, and my body pretty much stayed the same. The last 6 months, I've done a little bit more resistance stuff, do a little more stretching. I kind of do my own sort of version of motion and I do pottery and painting, whatever it is, do something. I fly airplanes. Yep. I'm practicing more in this world to speak up. One of my friends just diagnosed with colon cancer. It inspires me to speak up when I hear the things going on. And recognizing that even hypertension and high cholesterol are made up diseases. Obesity is a made up disease. They're not diseases.
It's a symptom of a greater issue, I think.
They're simply side effects to a plant-based diet. That's all they are.
And, someone I follow and really respect always says, what happens to a star when it's dying? It expands. Right. So what obesity, we're expanding. There's all this inflammation. So that's a sign when you have that issue that something is wrong. Right. And
Yeah.
it's not about going on Weight Watchers and, yeah.
Obesity is not a disease. It's a survival mechanism.
Right. Exactly.
If you look at many, many animals, if they do not get fat, they will be infertile and they will die. We are forgetting our 3.5 million years of evolution. Obesity fat is survival. We easily get fat for the one reason. In the fall or late summer, the animals that we consumed, and if we did consume fruit, we did not consume vegetables because they're not sweet tasting. We consumed fruit. You would consume it until you were overly full so that the liver can take all that sugar and convert it to fat and store it for the next 3 to 6 months.
Right, because then it's all dead. There's nothing, right? And it's cold and you got what you can kill. You got the meat you can kill, and that's it.
And so we're that hunter, and I think as we begin to see it, because you and me, I loved vegetables and fruit and seeds and nuts and the 3 to 6 grazing meals a day. And then I know in the yoga world and maybe even the TCM world, traditional Chinese medicine, you got to fuel your metabolism. You got to eat more frequently to get your metabolism moving. Is that something you've heard in your world very much? And
well, I mean, I think it just happens by default. If you are eating a vegetarian diet, you're just more hungry because you don't have nutrients. That's, so yeah, there's tons of let's have this nut, serving of nuts as a snack or a smoothie or a juice or this, that's just it's kind of the lifestyle really.
Well, and it's interesting. So if we were to go out and pick almonds and many seeds and nuts without being properly processed, they are poisonous.
Oh yeah.
And you can, if you combine fatty animal meat with a plant-based diet, you can actually live a long time. But the poisons from plants are the deadly components that we really don't think about. And ultimately, Glucose supplies a fuel to the liver to make fat. A liver failure patient, and actually, I think insulin resistance is not true, but basically what's happening is because the glycation has damaged the liver cells. So rather than 100% of liver cell function, you have 50%. So now the conversion of sugar to fat is less efficient. So your glucose levels actually rise, which causes more glycation, which is why people get their legs cut off or they go blind or lose their kidney function, which is simply from the simple glycation, which is happening. Again, we in modern medicine have created such scientific facts that are actual false. Ketosis doesn't matter. Ketone bodies don't matter. Fat matters.
Yeah, just getting enough fat matters. I don't want people chasing ketones and stressing out about it. Like I said, it can be kind of fun and kind of motivating when you're first starting out to see, oh, my body is able to do this, cool thing. But if you live and die by those numbers, like I said earlier, you're going to end up thinking you need to drink exogenous ketones. You need to, buy these specific supplements as fat burners, and our body doesn't need those things. It really doesn't.
And Ken Berry talks about this also. It's we get lured into thinking if I just take this, a couple of questions.
Everything's going to be better.
Right. And faith first. Always believe and have hope and have faith in God for whatever's going on in your life, but do the daily practice of the gratitude attitude. Critical.
Yes.
And that one meal today to me is it. One meal at night, rest and digest, but motion. And what you're doing is giving an amazing health and wellness story that's motivating, that I think is so healing for so many. A couple of questions on spices and seasonings. What are your thoughts?
I'm not a big spice and seasoning person. I just kind of lost my taste for those things, honestly. I know some carnivores that love those things, but I kind of lost my taste for them. When I did carnivore for 2 years solid, I only used a little bit of salt and that was it. So yeah, and it's not really something that I use a lot of.
Spices are deadly.
And pepper, pepper is one of the things that can cause a major inflammatory reaction in people. So
if it hurts in your eyes, don't put it in your body.
Don't put it in your body. I agree.
Don't put it in your body. That's what I always say. And another one, Alexa asked about correlation, high fats and meats and things. And I essentially believe that, again, high cholesterol, there's low cholesterol is deadly.
Yeah, it is deadly. You got to check it out. Is it your triglycerides that are high? Because that's not good. My triglycerides were a 70, I think, last time I checked. Or actually, I think they were even a little lower than that. But if your triglycerides are over a 150, that's a problem. That's a problem with your liver. But I don't really see people doing carnivore or keto that have high triglycerides. Usually it's the opposite. Usually their triglycerides are beautiful. So we have to have a nuanced conversation about cholesterol.
So we're manipulated in the studies and the tests that make us think I've got to get this. And that's the problem.
Right.
It is, I say, stop testing, stop measuring. Because the more you do it, your doctor they're gonna find something in those.
My doctor said, you need a statin. I'm like, nope.
No. Diabetes. See, statins cause diabetes.
Right.
And
a lot of people don't know they make your A1C go up.
Oh yeah.
Dr. Berry did a talk about that not super long ago. But the statins can actually make your blood sugar go up.
And so carnivore is a high animal fat nutrition. It is not a high meat diet.
Right.
It's fatty meat. That's why chicken and turkey and fish is deadly. I know it's so crazy, but
if you eat it, I think you got to add fat, because I eat a lot of wild seafood, but I balance that out with egg yolks, with beef suet, with beef fat, because I do eat that. But if I'm going to eat that, I'll be starving. If I just eat a piece of fish, I'm going to feel like crap. I got to eat some fat along with that. You can't just eat it by itself.
So
And I don't eat chicken though.
wild caught. I
Wild
was
caught
reading
seafood.
an article about ranching.
Oh
So
no.
so it's interesting. They let the salmon go from a hatchery, and the fish always come back to the hatchery. So what we're calling wild caught may not be what we think it is.
Right. You
But
gotta source it. You gotta source it right.
it,
And
well,
I usually eat the little salmon eggs, the salmon roe, because
well,
that's gonna have the lowest amounts of mercury. That's the purest way, I think, to get that wild seafood.
well, the egg part is critical and the fatty meat part, but you got to eat the skin.
Yep. Gotta eat the skin.
You got to
Yep.
eat the head. That's why sardines are probably good because
Yeah, I
generally,
eat sardines a couple times a week with my
what's your,
homemade mayonnaise, a ton of homemade mayonnaise. I don't eat them plain.
you're going to share how you make that homemade mayonnaise? Is it on your website or
I need to put it on the website. It's just egg yolks and bacon fat, not nothing real complicated.
What about, do you use lemon squeeze or limes and things like that? I mean, I do a little bit because I think, again, a
Yeah.
little small amount from time to time is not the thing that's going to likely get you. What's your thoughts on those sort of
Yeah,
things?
I'll use a little lemon squeeze every now and then. I think it does help to add some structuring to the water and a little minerals to the water. So I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. It's not something I do daily, but I mean, actually got it's funny you say that. I've got my water with a little lemon in it right now. So
And
I
again,
don't think it's bad for you, honestly.
I have my ice cream recipe that I use cane sugar. See,
Hmm.
my theory is simple sugars are quite easily converted to fat fast. Complex carbohydrates are actually the deadly thing. So we're confused. Again, your body is made to convert sugar to fat, but it's not meant to contain all the complex carbs, fiber, vegetables, and the bacteria, yeast, and microbes that come along with it.
Yeah, and it's all most of it is sprayed with all kinds of crap that's just going to make us sicker and sicker with the glyphosate. I mean, that's a huge conversation what glyphosate does to the body. If you look at Dr. Stephanie Seneff and her work, I mean, it's it's
Well,
huge.
yet what people do not know is that the majority of plant poisons are actually made by the plants.
Mm.
So everyone's going to their local organic farm and getting all these vegetables thinking, wow, there's no pesticides. But in fact, the plants actually make the pesticides. And that's the hard part to believe. That disrupts the brain, the bowels, and every cell of our bodies. The damage is not from the sugar in a small amount, nor is it from the pesticides that are sprayed. It's from actually the plants that do not want to be eaten. They want to thrive and survive, and they have millions of years of more evolution than you and I, because we use our smart science to somehow outsmart the universe. But planet
You can't do
Earth,
it. You can't outsmart nature. The more you try to outsmart and disconnect from nature, the sicker you're going to get. End of story.
tell us about your family, your kids on carnivore, and your philosophy, and another next one is going to be, what do your doctors think of you?
Well, my family really eats mostly meat based. Honestly, it took them a little bit to catch on, but after, mama cooks the meals. So when mama stops making the sides, we stop asking for it. So, I mean, we can look at it. We can look at a meal differently now in my house. We really do. Every now and then my husband will be like, can you cook me this side? I'm like, all right, but it's a very rare thing. So in my house, really, we eat a lot of meat. We have for snacks. And this is how I got through first trimester. My friend Philip Meese has a company called the Carnivore Bar, and I call them my meat saltines. I don't know if you've ever talked to Philip before. He's a wonderful person.
Yeah.
Oh, you got to talk to Philip. He's amazing. But he has the carnivore bars. And I call them the meat saltines because when I was not feeling well, my first trimester, it was hard for me to do a lot of cooked meat. And so I just survived on these carnivore bars. I'd break them in half and I'd have a little hard boiled egg with it. But that's the snacks in our house. We have carnivore snacks, carnivore crisps, carnivore bars. If you need a snack, go back, get a bag of meat, you know? So it's, my family eats very different than most other people. And then, what my doctors thought of me when I first went to, I'll be 43 next Saturday. So I'm not a spring chicken getting pregnant here. So when I first went to, well, comparatively so, when I first went to a doctor to get my hormones run and just kind of see where I was at, she wanted to know what supplements I was taking. Told her I was taking desiccated organs, liver, and she's like, oh, no. You have to stop that immediately if you want to get pregnant. That's terrible. You're going to, it's got heavy metals in it. It's horrible for you. And I was like, no, not going to listen to that advice. And then later on, I found out she's a vegan, this doctor I was seeing for endocrinology. So, most of my doctors have just said, whatever you're doing at your age and getting pregnant, keep doing it. I'm not going to argue with you, but I don't go into great detail about the nuances of my diet.
It is. I share what I do in the way because at 66, on my way to 67 years young, I'm getting younger every day. I'm learning that the mind and the mouth masters the miracle machine. And I highly recommend yoga, meditation, prayer, Tai Chi, get off the treadmill, go for a walk in nature, be creative. And by the way, saltine crackers are deadly.
Yeah, I would not touch them first trimester. My husband offered, he's like, don't you want the salt? I'm like, no, I'm just having the carnivore bars. I'll be fine. And it was fine. It helped.
Actually fasting in the first trimester is critical because the reason we get nausea and vomiting in the first trimester is the human body says, do not eat that. So remember, since historically we get fat to get fertile, get pregnant, and fast. That is the nature of the human body. We've been masterfully manipulated. And I tell all of my patients with infertility and repetitive losses when they're pregnant and they have some significant nausea and vomiting, don't eat.
Yep. I had to. If I didn't eat, I'd start dry heaving.
But dry heaving, but again, look at most pregnant animals fast. Yeah. And look at bears, look at so many other animals. And the reason for nausea and vomiting is to say, do not put that in my body. And so dry heaving, historically, likely we got pregnant, we rested in a cave. We weren't going to work. We weren't doing all these things. We weren't doing any of this stuff.
Right.
And the reason bears are able to do it, or polar bears also, is because they have fat, but we've masterfully manipulated women to be skinny, which is deadly. Your baby only uses your fat for fuel, nothing else. And the building blocks of your cells are actually fat because the cells of your fat contain glycoproteins. The fatty cells contain the glycans and the proteins in the fat cells that are critical for the fuel of your babies. And so the more people recognize that eating a plant-based diet or 3 to 6 meals a day is deadly, and if you feed your baby, it's actually not correct. Your body knows what to do already. That's critical. Let's see, Sarah, you are amazing. Tell us how people could find you and learn more about how yoga practice and carnivore really fuels the Ferrari.
Yeah, I have an Instagram page. It's carnivore.yogi on Instagram. Same thing on Facebook. And then if you go to YouTube and search Carnivore Yogi, you'll find my channel. I also have a podcast called the Carnivore Yogi Podcast that comes out weekly, and membership group and all kinds of great stuff. I try to put out a lot of free content daily on Instagram and then on YouTube a couple times a week as well.
Well, we're really grateful to you. I know we could probably spend hours. You've got a family. We got so much to do in our lives. And to everyone that's sharing, check out drkiltz.com. You can find out more about Carnivore Yogi and the links and all of this. So again, thank you to everyone, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, but let's keep sharing. And if you're suffering a mindful yoga practice and get back to the truth of the proper human diet, Ken Berry is carnivore. God bless. Thanks, everyone.